You know, over and over again I say, we don't make mistakes, we have happy accidents. So today, let's have a happy accident and see what we can make out of it.
Today, I'm going to be making a bronze lamp out of sagebrush. So I think this piece will work, but this branch is sticking out a little too far. So I'm going to try to cut it down without leaving saw marks. The best way to avoid saw marks is to not use a saw. Just like a Civil War surgeon. Breaking it rather than cutting it gives it a nice natural look, unlike the bottom, but for those, I'll just zip that off with my chop saw. But then I realized, I have no idea how tall a lamp actually is, so I had to go on a reconnaissance mission. That weird guy you always see in the store? Yeah, that's me. Let's go with 16 inches. Perfect. Now there's some bark left on it, and I'm worried about how the silicone rubber is going to infuse with that. I don't think that's going to mold very well, so I'm going to try to get that off or seal it. I peeled off what I could, but for the rest, I just grabbed a wire brush. I drilled a small hole in the bottom and attached it to a base, and now it kind of has the appearance of a lamp. The wood is porous, so I want to try to close that up with some clear coat. That'll minimize the amount the silicone rubber bonds with the wood. I notice a few gaps, and I don't want the silicone rubber to leak into those and lock on, but with a small piece of clay I can fill that in. I want to blend in the clay so it looks like a natural wood pattern. It's difficult though to match the fine detail, so I find that just taking some bark and pressing it in gives me the exact natural pattern I need. This is called a skin mold. It's a thin layer of rubber that captures all the detail, but this will still take several coats before it's done. So the thin skin of silicone is cured, all the detail is captured, and is completely encased. But I need this to be a little bit thicker. So instead of putting another fresh layer on there that's just gonna run off, I'll add this carboxyl fumed silica to thicken it up. But this stuff's like cancer in a jar. Dust goes everywhere. It's a scary looking dust. So if you use it, don't forget your PPE. I'll need to add some keys, so I take pieces of silicone rubber and cut smaller squares out of it. They'll basically act like Legos on a block. The silicone rubber will lock into the hard backer to make sure everything is aligned perfectly. The next step is to make a dividing line so we can put a hard shell on that. For that, I went to the dollar store, I got some playing cards, and we're gonna make a dividing line. I use a combination of pins and tape to hold the cards on. I can't have any gaps, so I need to seal those up before I put the hard shell on too. Once that's done, it's time to put it down for the hard backer. I've spent so much time on it, it's kind of my baby at this point. I'll use some liquid fiberglass to make the hard backer. So the shell is all hard. Now the question is, can I get it off the mold? But before I try to get it off, I'm going to drill holes in there so I make sure I can align it perfectly when I put it back together. So we got the shell off. Now I gotta see if I can get the rubber off. I'm going to use a razor to cut the piece of wood out, and I'm going to use a wavy cut going back and forth as I do it. That'll help the two pieces lock back together and try to avoid any parting lines when I pour this in wax. And just as I was afraid of, that silicone rubber is hanging on pretty tight to the wood. I want to separate it, but I also don't want to tear the rubber. So the rubber came off more or less okay. There's a few spots where the rubber tore off and some areas where the wood tore off. I'll continue to pick some of that out, but even if there's a little bit left, I think it'll be okay because it's natural wood pattern as it is. And even if that gets stuck to the wax, it should burn out. I don't think it'll be a problem. I don't think. Then from there, our rubber should lock back into our shell like so, and then the shell will make sure it keeps its shape. This is why those keys were so important. Now it's like putting the Lego blocks together. I'll put the bolts in to keep everything squared away. And then it's time to pour in the wax. It will take several layers to get it up to thickness. I keep the wax as low of a temperature as I can while still keeping it nice and fluid. That helps prevent bubbles. It's still pretty hot though. Life is hard. It's harder when you're stupid. Once I've built the wax up enough and it's nice and cool, I can unscrew it and see what I've got. And it looks exactly like a wax tree. There's still some bark on it, but that's okay. You can even count the tree rings. There's a slight parting line, but I'll buff that away. Overall, I'm really happy with it, but we're going to give it one more try, and hopefully we can get a better result. In my experience, the second pull is always better than the first. And in this case, it also cleared away some of that bark. There's still a few bubbles that showed up, so I take some dental tools and draw in the wood grain and blend it in. Now I have to figure out how to sprue this thing up. It's too big for my investment casting, so I'm going to use a different method. I think I'm going to try to have it fill from the bottom up. So I have a sprue running into the bottom, and the bronze will fill it all the way to the top. Whoops. At least the two different types of wax tend to separate fairly easily. The sprues here will act more as a support to hold the thing together than an actual vent or anything. And then I make a quick bracket to hang it on. I got a brand new bucket of suspenda slurry, and this will be the first time I've ever tried to use this. And man, these lids are on tight. This was really a fight to get this thing open. And yes, I am pushing down the little red opening valve thing. Luckily, I'm a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, and with a little closed guard action, I finally got the thing to break. I'm so proud of myself. This piece is too long to fit in the bucket, so I'm going to have to flip it back and forth to coat this fully. And never again will I do this without gloves. What a mess. And I'm sure it's not healthy. I let the first coat dry on its own. The next coats will have sand embedded in it. I dip it in a slurry and then coat it in sand. Let it dry and repeat that process about 9 or 10 times. I think I've built the layers up thick enough, but I realize I've encased the wax cup inside, so I need to cut the top of the shell off and also open up the vent I have. There are ways to prevent that I'll use next time. Now I need to burn the wax out, and since I don't have a burnout kiln, I'm going to be using the weed burner method. I've seen other people use this method, but watching it and doing it yourself are two different things. I know wax expands as it heats up, so you have to heat the shell fast enough that the wax turns to liquid rather than just swelling and cracking your shell. So right off the bat we have a devastating crack. I don't know if I'm going to be able to fix that. It's ready to fall off as it is. As I was saying, wax expands and cracks your shell. I want to say that's just from wax expansion. I was trying to set up another camera so I could watch the cup burn out, and when I came back, it was cracked. So I think it was slowly heating up enough for the wax to expand, but not fast enough for it to melt, and it cracked it. I'm going to see if I can repair this. I don't know. So it's time for some emergency surgery. I'm going to try to put this back together and heal it by adding layers of ceramic and sand. So that crack is healed, similar to a bone. So let's see if I can do this again without breaking it. So you can see right here is another crack. I think all the wax is out of there, but I'm gonna have to address that crack before we get going. I'm gonna let this cool down and patch it up the way I did before. So I was letting it cool, and I came back out to check on it, and it slid off my bar. It's completely destroyed.
Because I'm not kidding when I tell you we don't make mistakes, we just have happy accidents.
Start again, that's all I can do. So I made another wax cast, did the chasing, and started dipping it again. It's really disappointing when you spend so many hours on something and it fails like that. But at least I didn't have to go all the way back to the molding process. At least I could start at the wax casting. As you can see, this has been a long time in the making. I've let a lot of time pass between attempts. I'm going to try a more evenly heated burnout and not quite as hot, and I'm even going to try to wire this to the brace so it doesn't fall on accident.
We have happy accidents.
So once again, catastrophic failure. There's hairline cracks all over the place. I saw them forming when I had the torch on there. I just hoped I'd be able to patch them after the fact. I don't know why this is happening. I switched to a silica sand. I thought that would be better. Same result. Suspenda slurry is not cheap. These are expensive mistakes. Dang it. I feel like I just want to go back to investment casting. Way easier. Gotta start again. So I make another wax copy and start adding on the ceramic shell again. This time I'm going to embed a thin wire in the ceramic shell to hopefully give it some strength. So for a third time, we'll try this. I got some wire running through there, so hopefully it won't crack. And this time I have a flash out kiln. The flash out kiln should distribute the heat more evenly around the outer shell. That should let the wax melt out faster and hopefully avoid the cracking. However, this piece is a little bit too tall, so I need to cut it down a bit. That looks so much better. I think that worked. I'm not quite sure what to do now. I think I'm gonna let it cool down and take a good look at it, make sure there's no cracks in it, then put it in my other kiln to bring it up to 1600 degrees and vitrify it. Then it'll be ready to pour. I did see it still did crack, but this time I'm gonna take some ceramic slurry and paint it on to fill that crack. This is my third try. It's the farthest I've gotten. I really hope this works.
And you've heard me say this before. I hope you're plagued with dissatisfaction as long as you live. Because as long as you are, you'll strive to do better.
I'm just drenched in sweat. It's hot work. Failed again. It'd just be nice if it worked. That's all. Just kind of be nice if it worked. The sand I'm using is an exceptionally well-rounded sand grain. And I'm wondering if that round ball isn't causing enough cohesion. Whereas maybe if I had a more angular sand, it would lock better and wouldn't break so easily. Just trying to think of solutions. So I let this cool off and you can see it burst open all the way up the center in the front and on the back. Let's pull it out and see what it looks like. The bronze has seemingly welded itself to the bucket, and this is being a royal pain to get out.
You know, when we do these paintings, we have a general idea of what we're going to do, but other than that, they're really not planned. We learn to work with what happens. And when you're at home, don't worry about following exactly what we have here. Let things happen and use what happens and create your own masterpieces.
So after some wire wheeling and a lot of sandblasting, this is what we've got. It's a bronze piece of wood. Not useful for a lamp, but if I've learned anything from Bob Ross over the years,
We have happy accidents.
so instead of a lamp, we're just going to turn this into a magnificent piece of art. And I've got some tricks that you may have not seen. What I see in my mind, it's going to be pretty cool. So plan B is to use what we've been given. It's time to start the metal chasing. Drilling and tapping some holes will allow me to attach this to a wooden base. What you're gonna see me do now is what I've learned from my dad. He's a taxidermist and he makes naturalistic scenery. So we're gonna turn this piece of bronze into a naturalistic scene. So you can see at the top of the piece there's still a hole there where the wiring was supposed to go through for the lamp. I don't want that there anymore, so I'm going to weld it up. A ball peen hammer hides the weld bead, and a rock adds some texture.
Just beat the devil out of it.
There's a little flashing left over from a few cracks, so I'll blend that away. A super easy way to add patina is to just heat it up. So the heat treating gives it a nice dark color pretty easily. Inside the grooves, I can still see there's some ceramic stuck in there. So I'm going to hit it again with a sandblaster. It's amazing how tough the ceramic is when you don't want it to be. It actually took a lot of sandblasting to get it clean, but now I'm going to give it a little bit of a shine with a wire wheel. Normally I'd mix a 2-part expandable foam, but window sealant is all I have, so I'm going to make this work. I don't want it to be so fluffy, so by stirring it, it adds density to the foam. By saturating some cotton, I can actually give the foam some strength and rigidity. I figured adding some sand would help keep it from expanding so much. I don't want it to expand fully, so I keep pressing it down and shaping it while it cures.
Things that we see as we run across the country teaching this fantastic method is people continually say, I can't draw a straight line. I don't have the talent, Bob, to do what you're doing. That's baloney. Talent is a pursued interest. In other words, anything that you're willing to practice, you can do. And since this is your world, you can do anything in your world that your heart desires. Just let your imagination take you to places that you never dreamed you could go. I think probably nothing will teach you more than just experimenting. Do as many different things as you have the nerve to do. Shoo, just go for it. Sometimes you learn more from mistakes than you do from trying so hard. So anytime you make a mistake, before you get upset with it, look at it. Sometimes those mistakes turn into be the best learning devices we have. And over I tell my students, if you ever do a painting you're completely satisfied with, you might as well quit, because you have nowhere else to go. There. And the next one that I do is going to be my masterpiece. Probably won't be this one, but the next one.